talking. Oh, man.
Talking big noise. Now, let's take me from the beginning, Mr. Wilson. The bio, sir. The bio. Where are you from? Where's home?
Well, home is northeast Oklahoma. It's Quapaw, a small town up by Miami.
Right, sir.
And just a small Native American town that's where I'm from, where I grew up. I was born in Miami, actually. My family's from that area. And had connections to Tulsa with my dad. My dad was kind of a transient type guy. He moved around and couldn't stay put, but he spent most of his life here in Tulsa. So we always had connections of visiting Tulsa, and even as a small child living here for a while. So that was how we ended up with connections here.
So he's Tulsa. He's a byproduct. He's Tulsa, baby. Now listen, what about siblings, man? You got any brothers and sisters you grew up with?
I do. I'm much older than most of them, but I've got a brother and a couple sisters that are still in the area. They live around that area. My brother, actually, a unique story about my brother is he raises thoroughbred horses. And he'll bring them and race them, and then usually sell them here in Tulsa at times at claiming races.
Man.
So, and he'll take those horses and he'll go to Hot Springs, he'll go down to Shreveport and different areas and run his horses. And he was actually an all-state basketball player and played at NSU for Ken Hayes.
Whoa, okay. So, bro has some. He's pretty decorated.
He likes those horses. I'll tell you, it's hard to get that boy off the ranch or out of the stables. He likes to train those horses.
Man, you gotta love that. You gotta love that for sure. But I'm hanging on to the first statement you made before you broke down your brother's background. You said you're much older than the rest of your siblings, right? So for a while you were the only child.
For sure.
What was that like, man? Did it ever? Were you super spoiled, or were you bored to death? Like, man, I need some company, man.
No, Aaron. I grew up kind of a very humble background. My mom had me at 18, and I was kind of raised by my grandparents up until about 6 or 7 years old when my mom kind of got her life together.
Right.
So I spent a lot of time really kind of on my own. Just had my grandfather was a truck driver, the one that was kind of my father figure, and so he was never home. It was just my grandma and I for so many years. So. It was a tough situation at times. We were like a lot of folks who didn't have a lot, but had good friends to play around with in the neighborhood and run around and do things with. So, that kind of occupied my time and semi kept me out of trouble. I'm sure I was a little bit of a pain in the butt from time to time, but just sports and fishing and running around with friends kind of kept you out of trouble as a kid.
Isn't it amazing how I say we, even though I'm a few years behind you, but even still, we were able to make a lot out of a little in terms of being able to entertain ourselves. Like I could think about maybe 5, 10 just games, if you want to call them that, offhand or off the top of my head, to go outside and just do, and we could figure it out.
Always. I'm going to tell you a funny story. We played Nerf football, and we played Nerf football all the time, and we would even use the Nerf football rather than just an old leather football out in the backyard, and so we'd have games. And we always like to play. Sometimes if it was raining or out in the rain, because you like to, or out in the snow, so that you can get muddy and feel like you're a real NFL player.
Really?
But we had some buddies that we had 2 Nerf footballs and we'd rotate them. And the other brother would take it in the house and put it in a cake pan and put it in the mom's oven, and we're drying it as we're playing. And I tell you what, he got in pretty bad trouble for putting that Nerf football in the oven to dry it out in between. Quarters or plays or whatever you want to call it. So it was funny.
That's crafty. The closest thing I can use to compare to that is like I can remember putting batteries in the freezer at one time. Trying to freeze some of that juice. You know what I mean? But that's pretty dang good. Now he never burned the football completely down, did he?
No, they got pretty crispy, but we didn't burn them up. But his mother was not too happy about us putting the Nerf footballs in her cake pan and putting them in the oven. Not a good move.
No. That's what you call mischief right there. Now, one thing my dad tells me all the time, that he came from humble beginnings too, similar to what you just described. But he said he never knew, he and his brother, they didn't know their state of affairs for real until they, I guess, went to the other side of town for the first time and saw that, we're actually living in some unforeseen circumstances, so to speak. So were you aware that you all didn't have much, or were you just in it and like, hey, this is what it is?
No, I think that it's what it is, similar to what your dad talks about. You don't, I don't know what you say, is you don't know better until you know better. You know what I mean? And so we just never knew. I can tell you to this day the exact first time I ever ate a McDonald's hamburger, a Big Mac, and I thought it was the greatest thing I ever ate. And it wasn't until I was in fourth grade to ever have my first time to ever have McDonald's. And it was in Joplin, Missouri on Main Street. I remember it like it was yesterday, and I thought, man, this is the greatest thing I've ever tasted.
That's right.
It was the first time I'd ever had a Big Mac. And then it wasn't a year later, it was the first time I'd ever had an Arby's sandwich. So when I was in fifth grade. So, you just kind of come up and you just know what you know.
That's right.
And you're humble, and you were happy with what you had, and you did your best.
That's right. And it's like, if you don't have anything to compare it to, it's easy to be content, right?
It is.
And I mean that in a good way, by the way. Right. Now, take me through the athletic background. What all did you play in your sports days?
Well, Aaron, I played a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
I wasn't worth a flip at any of it. Maybe I thought I was, and I was tough, and I was a competitor, but,
right.
Just football, basketball, baseball, did it all.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed it. I grew up with a great bunch of guys. Had the misfortune to be a quarterback on a perfect quarterback through a perfect season in my freshman year. We were completely defeated.
Yeah, defeated.
Didn't win a game.
Zero and everything.
Zero and everything. But but we had a good time, and got through high school and got into college. And I used to say went over and helped Coach Larry Gibson at NEO, and he actually gave me a scholarship to stay out of the way and not hurt anybody. He said, Mick, you go over there and stay out of the way. And got to be a student assistant with him. Probably thought I was good enough, but I was nowhere probably near. But I enjoyed being around it, and that's really where I learned a lot about the game. You don't know until you know.
That's true.
I tried to soak it up from Coach Gibson. He probably had a big impact on my career and my life. Guided me. He's mentored so many guys, not only in the Tulsa area but throughout the country, winning national championships and being super successful. That's probably where I got my interest in coaching and got my a strong interest in teaching, and started down that road. Was being around Larry Gibson, and he's been a great mentor, someone that you can always talk to, and he's mentored and helped so many guys that we know, whether it's Steve Cooper, Tom Hankins, so many guys. Absolutely, guys in this area that really look up to Coach Gibson, and his influence just goes way beyond now that he's retired at Northeastern, but just reaches far-reaching, really.
That's a beautiful thing. That's that coaching tree we talk about. But you spoke to mentality in a roundabout way right there, and I want to circle back to that defeated season you talked about. Mm-hmm. Man, what did it take, or what was it that if you can point to anything that kept you guys coming back every day, and you're constantly losing, and I know you're hearing probably a bunch of coach speech after speech after speech, and I know after a while, the kids need a breakthrough to some degree, or else it's like, man, what am I listening to this guy for? What kept y'all coming back day after day?
I think it's just your camaraderie with your teammates and your friends. Mm-hmm. It's been that way through everything that you do in life, Aaron. You surround yourself with good people, and it makes successes to me more enjoyable, and it makes the defeats a little easier to deal with.
Yes, sir.
No matter what you do, just surround yourself with good people you can trust, people that have your back. There's so many people that are in it from themselves, and I always tried to not associate with those people. Not to say that I'm better or whatever. It's just a philosophical difference. That I want to surround myself with like-minded people. I heard Drew Pearson speak a few years ago, and he's such a great speaker. But all those great years as wide receiver for the Cowboys, and he said, if you want to be successful, you surround yourself with successful people.
That's
true. That's all. He said it's real simple. That's all I've ever done, and I've tried to do the same thing. I've always had a kind of an eclectic approach. I like to steal, pick and choose different things from people that have been successful. And I used to even go to football clinics as a basketball coach and listen to the football coaches speak. To be honest with you, some of the best stuff I've ever picked up has been from Bill Parcells or some of the great Division I football coaches along the way, going to their camps and clinics and listen to those guys speak. So I just think that you just surround yourself with good people. And again, people that align themselves with you philosophically, I think it's pretty easy.
Man, that's a unique thing to do right there. Did anybody put the idea in your mind to do that, or you just one day say, you know what, I think I'm going to the football coaches clinic?
No, I just I heard a series back when they used to have the cassette tapes.
Oh yeah.
And I put a cassette in one day, and I was listening to Joe Paterno. And, regardless of how his career ended and that whole scandal, the guy was a good coach, whether it was morally challenged or whatever that situation was, I'm not to judge, but sure. This was long before that, and I put his cassette in and was listening to him, and I thought, wow. And so the next thing I did was I was in a bookstore one day looking, and I picked out the Bill Parcells book. And I'll tell you, to this day, for coaches coming up, young coaches, they need to get his book. It's called Finding a Way to Win. It's one of the best books I've ever read. It's hands down top notch, good read for any coach of any sport. It was a changer for me. It really helped me a lot.
You mean gonna have me running the Barnes and Nobles after this, coach?
you can borrow mine, or we can find you. You probably find it really cheap on Amazon.
Listen, man, don't be surprised if I take you up on it.
Okay, I just gotta have it back because that book's the story of my career.
You know what? I'm glad you said that because now that will give me a due date, and I need that. I always need to know where the finish line is.
There you go.
Put a fire under my butt. But when it comes to philosophy, one thing I've learned in my life, and I'm gonna shoot this at you, and you correct me if I say something off key. I came into coaching specifically thinking that what I knew or the way that I was taught was the only way that there was to be taught. But I soon after got humbled, and so I realized, okay, that the way you derive your philosophy, at least just to me, you come in with whatever you have to start with, and then you just you pull some things that you agree with from here, some things that you agree with from here, and you sort of figure out what approach works for you. And, okay, maybe I'm an extension of Mick Wilson, or I'm an extension of Brandon Wade, mixed with me, whatever I am. Right. To that, you'd say what?
Well, I'll tell you, and it's funny because Gil and I've had that exact conversation in this office so many times that we get young coaches, and they really haven't developed their philosophy yet, and they really don't know how to coach. And I don't mean that as a slight to them, because the only way they know how to coach is the way that they were coached. Mm-hmm. And they haven't really thought about trying to take a little bit of that and apply it to their personality, and then go over here and study a few other coaches and take some of those things and apply it so that it rolls all up into one, and that becomes you as a coach. I think you get that as you get older.
Right.
I think you get that as your career evolves. I think when you're young, you come into it, Aaron, and this would be advice for you, for any other coach, something I could pass along. I think when you're young, you come into it thinking it's about you. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to be successful. And the longer you're in your career, it becomes less about you. It becomes more about the student athletes. It becomes more about your fellow coaches. It becomes more about your administrators. It becomes more about others and less about you. And I think that's probably a good lesson to be learned as we all come into it thinking it's going to be me. I'm going to be a great coach. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to win a championship. And by the end, you say, we won a championship. We did this. We built up this program. So that would be something I think that you learn as a coach. Just not learning to coach as you were coached, but picking up bits and pieces as you go. It's like a snowball. As you roll, it's going to get bigger, and it's just going to any leaves or anything that gets caught up, and it's just going to become part of the snowball. And so that's what makes it what it is.
That's really true. And I would hear a phrase. I'm sure you've heard it several times too. I've heard people be described as mature beyond his years or mature beyond her years. And to me, that means the more you can figure out in terms of stuff that's really quote unquote reserved for later, the more that you can figure out early on, the better off you can be. But in my mind, I'm like, is there a way to skip that phase of it being about you?
No, I don't think that.
I think we all sort of hit that patch, right?
I think everyone comes out. I think that's a little bit of an ego of an athlete. Somebody that's been a competitor,
right?
Because especially if you've been a very highly successful athlete, you're still in that mindset that this is kind of about me a little bit.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that in a bad way, because you got to have a little bit of an ego to be successful in sports. You
Sure.
got to be a competitor. You can't. We don't go all out there to play to be liked. We go out there to win.
Come on now, and ego is just another word for pride, in my opinion.
And that's part of it too. So I think along the way, a great example that I watch now is Tom Brady. Look at the maturation of this guy.
Yeah.
And you talk about a snowball. He's still rolling, and he's still gathering steam, and he's still getting better, and guys just believe in him. Mm-hmm. I mean, look at the guy. The guys were lined up to sign with the Buccaneers so they could get on the train. But the guy's a winner. The guy, the Patriots aren't the same now, obviously. Mm-hmm. So I think that's part of it. You come into it as a coach thinking me, and by the end we're saying we. And if you're not, then you're probably not going to be very successful at the end.
Oh yeah, and you won't be there to say that.
Right.
That's a fact. Now you mentioned Coach Gibson giving you your start into coaching, right? Mm-hmm. How long was that stint, and then where'd you pivot to once you left from under his instruction?
Well, I bounced around a little bit, and then ended up, I got my undergraduate degree at Pittsburgh State,
okay,
and didn't really do much there. While I was in college, I started coaching, doing some Rule 10, which is in Oklahoma, it's like being an adjunct while you're finishing up college, and I did that in Pittsburgh, Kansas. And then did some small school basketball, and really ended up through all that back at Pittsburgh. I took over probably the losingest program in the state of Kansas, Pittsburgh High School. And what was unique about that was they were a football powerhouse, and I just didn't understand how they could be winning 0, 1, 2, 3 games a year and have such a, competing for state championships in football. And so right off the bat, when I got that position, I did what I knew how to do was identify the guys on the football team that, one, are good athletes, but two, that are winners, to take some of that mentality.
Yes, sir.
And right off the bat, we were able to do that. And within 3 years, we were in the 5A state championship game against Blue Valley North out of Kansas City.
See.
And probably a great example of that, we had Shad Meyer, who went to K-State, started and played for the Tennessee Titans, but Shad had not played that much basketball. In fact, played in junior high but had given it up. And he was one of my first guys. I'm like, Shad, we need to get you out. And we got a guy like him to come out, and then sure enough, 2 or 3 other good football players want to be a part of that. And we started winning some games there and had some success. And obviously, you get a guy like Shad, who's an NFL player.
Come on now.
We were successful with guys, and then we had some other guys that really got on board, and we had the Russell Greens and Byron Harveys and Johnny Evans and some guys that had moved into the area from Wichita and Kansas City, and we pieced together a pretty good team and got those guys rolling for 3 or 4 years, and were able to win a lot of games. And then from there, the famous story of how I ended up here and how I know you and how I know Tulsa Public Schools was I had a point guard that was really, really good. He'd moved in from Gary, Indiana, had gone to Gary Roosevelt, which was the same high school as Glenn Robinson. And Russell Green was my point guard, and had been a Golden Glove boxer, and was getting a lot of Division I entry. Almost like he was, if you could picture Mike Tyson being a point guard.
Oh my God, that's a movie.
That's what this kid looked like. I mean, he single-handedly one of the toughest players I've ever coached. But he gets invited to a Division I basketball camp in Kansas City by Tom Teets, and so I go to work this camp and take Russell with me. And who's my roommate? Terry Scott from Tulsa Central.
Coach Scott.
And so we developed a bond and worked together a couple of years there. And then when the East Central job came open, T. Scott turned me on to it, and started working toward that. And of course, along the way from Coach Gibson, as you were talking about, one of my mentors became Gene Iba. And Coach Iba's a Central graduate,
yes, he
of course.
is.
So ironically, he was the head coach at Pittsburgh State while I was the head coach at Pittsburgh High. And Gene Iba was real complimentary because we had another kid that was a Major League Baseball pitcher named Eric Bernhardt that had got drafted by the Florida Marlins. And Coach Iba had really recruited him hard. And so one of the things Coach Iba said, he said, Mick, you really developed that kid, and gave me a lot of compliments. So when TPS was looking for a basketball coach for East Central, Mr. O'Malley called Iba, and he gave me this, unbeknownst to me, gave me this really, really glowing endorsement.
Man.
And so when I thought I was coming to the interview at East Central for the job, and when I walked in, he said, I've already done my homework. Would you take this job if I offer it to you?
Ooh.
It was one of the first few questions he asked me, and I said, well, absolutely, because T. Scott had already visited with him as well. So that's kind of how I ended up here, and it was really unique, but and it was very flattering and humbling all at the same time. But and then from there, I just had a lot of people here that really have been supportive. The community of Tulsa has been good to me over the years, Aaron, and what can I say? I just feel blessed.
Haven't left since.
No, well, left for a while, but came back.
Yeah.
But
we did.
Absolutely.
I got a couple things I want to ask about that. People say, this was just common, I look at it as common knowledge now. I would always hear this from head coaches before I became one. They say when you first take over a program, it takes, 3 to 5 years to build it or to turn it around. And you sort of described that almost to a T with your experience, up there in Kansas, being able to turn it around in 3 years. Is there any truth to that?
I don't think I ever really had a time frame, Aaron. I just put my nose down to the grind, started working. And one thing I've always done, in fact, Randy Rutherford and I had this conversation a few years ago. I always look at 2 or 3 of the teams that are really, really good and are consistent and that make the state tournament each year, and those are the people I put the targets on.
Yeah.
I want to build my teams to be able to compete with those people.
That's
I
true.
want to look and see what I'm going to have to do. And in Oklahoma, I always said, if I'm in the 5A East or 6A East, then I know I've got to be one of those top 4 folks to get in the state tournament.
Yes, sir.
So who's going to be the 5 or 6 teams that are going to be battling for those 4 spots, and that's how I have to build my team. That's where I want to find my strengths and try to avoid my weaknesses, and then also expose other people's weaknesses. So I always looked to the successful people, and that's who I went after. And I think that's really part of it. When I arrived at East Central, I mean, the Green Country Conference, Aaron, was loaded. I mean,
oh yeah.
I was going against coaching legends, whether it's Robert Sprague, Terry Scott, Luther Pegues, I mean, Nate Harris. I coached against all of them. And
big dogs.
Yeah, and I was really fortunate that first year here, and I don't say this braggingly, but I was able to beat them all my first year.
Really? You got a piece of all of them, huh?
I did the first year, and of course you know your conversations with T. Scott.
Yes, sir.
That's really because the guys I inherited had gotten from Cooper and Hankins. Those kids were tough, and we just tried to build. I tried to add my touches to it, didn't try to change a lot.
Right.
But they had built a good program at East Central, both Steve Cooper and Tom Hankins, and so I felt like I was the beneficiary of some of their hard work, and then I just rolled up my sleeves and tried to keep it going, and we were able to. But those kids were so tough, and we were just able to beat people just out of toughness. We weren't out-talenting anybody. I mean, Josh Atkinson was a great athlete. Clint Hill's a good athlete, not great athlete. He was a good one. Munchie was a good athlete, not great.
Not exceptional.
Yeah, but he's just. I mean, tell me who's tougher than Antonio Anderson, Antonio Blakely now.
Man, listen.
He always said, "Coach, give me the other team's best player." He wanted them, and he would guard them. And then we had guys like Corey Woodfork and Jake Simmons and some of those other guys, and they just played hard. And they played together. We didn't fight or fuss or anything. We had a good time.
So would you call the transition that you made from Kansas to becoming the head coach at East Central pretty seamless? Because the reason where I'm coming from with that question is I've been around the block just a couple of times, but I've always learned that you got that, particularly the older class, let's say juniors and seniors that have been accustomed to doing things a certain way under a certain person's instruction. A lot of times the process of getting them to buy in can be a little lengthy. Maybe even the entire year. And you may have to trim some fat and dismiss some guys that aren't willing to get on board, or they self-eliminate for the same reason. How was it for you when you first came to East Central?
We didn't have any of that.
Really?
No, we really didn't. We had a great group of kids. I think right off the bat, I think they probably wanted to know my resume a little bit. And we'd just come off of getting beaten in the 5A state championship game in Kansas. And so I think I had their respect right off the bat. I think they trusted me, but I think again that goes back to the discipline and the hard work and the time that Coach Cooper and Coach Hankins had put in with those kids. And I just made sure I was not going to let them down. I was not going to be a step below what they were doing. If anything, it made me want to make it a step higher because I knew they'd been successful. I tried to always make sure that I was never critical of anything they had done in the past because those guys obviously had earned their stripes. And so I just want to let those guys know that, hey, we're going to keep it the same level, and I'm going to do my best to try to raise it another level if we can. And we were able to, like I said, to win some games. We beat Memorial, was number 1 and undefeated, and we got them right at Christmas time before the break.
Oh, man.
And T. Scott came over and said, man, you're trying to come down here and run the deck. But I
can hear him saying that.
That was a big game. But we had some big wins, and I always tease Jason Parker about that. I'm like, hey, you remember when we got you? And of course, they whacked us a couple times back, so it all worked out in the wash, but it evened out. So, but no, we I didn't have to battle any of that. We had, not to say that there wasn't times that Munchie can't buck up a little bit. He's a competitor, but
for sure.
Once again, Bill Parcells always says, Aaron, if they don't bite when they're puppies, they're probably not going to bite when they're dogs.
Ooh.
So, again,
I gotta read that book.
Straight out of that book.
Read that book.
Yeah, it's good stuff. I'd rather have them. I'd rather have to rein them in a little bit than to try to kickstart them.
That's right. I love that, man. That's so real. It's all about which battle you want to fight, and I think I'd rather fight that one.
That's right.
Now, assistant coaches, who were on your staff, or who was on your staff?
Well, I've been fortunate to have some good guys, but at East Central I had Keith Bryans, who's now Keith ended up being the head coach after I left, and did a good job. But Keith is the assistant now over at Coweta, and had Coach Mack for a while. I brought him to East Central, had Coach Mack with me. And really, here in Tulsa, that was about it. We didn't have a large staff. I've never been one to have. I don't like having 5 and 6 guys on the sideline. I've always said, and it's not an ego thing. I've always said that there's going to be one voice coming from the sideline. It's going to be mine.
That's right.
The big thing with that is that Aaron is. I don't want kids trying to hear different people and get confused. I always told the assistants, if you want to say something, tell me, and I'll tell them. Or during a break, say, hey, coach, I'm going to talk to him and whatever. And that's not an ego thing. I always tried to eliminate all the distractions for kids and just have them focus on playing basketball. Basketball is a hard sport to play. I mean, you're inside, it's loud. There's no time, there's really not timeouts. You're not taking a break and huddling up and calling a new play, and it's just a continuous game of action. And that's
it's
why
a thinking man's game. That's what I told my boys the other day.
So we want to try to eliminate that as much as we can. I'll tell you, a coach that I used to admire, he'd literally sit there the whole game and not say hardly anything, was Tom Smith of Missouri Western. And at Missouri Western State University. And they had a lot of success over the years. The Griffins won a lot of games, but Tom would literally, Aaron, not say a word. He wouldn't talk to the officials. He wouldn't talk to his players. He'd talk to them during timeouts, but he wouldn't get up and call plays. He just let his kids play. And he was the great thing about Tom Smith was he always ran the no offense. He was one of the first guys really running a true motion game with, cutting and passing and things like that, and did a great job of it. But I always admired different coaching styles. Literally, Aaron, you would sit and watch him. I would watch him at Pittsburgh State play when they came to town, and he just sits there on the bench and thinking, how do these guys know what they're doing? But he was successful.
I think every coach sort of has like an imagination or a fantasy of being able to do that. But like, I don't know. I'm too antsy. It's like I always find something to say. But I guess there's something to be said about someone who has conditioned their team to be able to do that. I mean, that sounds like months and hours and days of work, reps over reps. And there's one coach that comes to mind that fits that description similarly, and that's Darlene Caleb. I mean, she's just so poker-faced, even-keeled, and I'm like, man, it's pandemonium in here. But if I'm looking at her, I couldn't tell what's going on. No. But the team is performing. It's like, hey, Jay, man, I don't know what to think about that. But maybe one day I'll get to that point. But speaking of, was it ever hard to delegate responsibilities as a head coach? Did you ever have a stint where you just wanted to try to do it all?
Again, I think that's part of a maturation process of a coach. I think you want to do it all when you're younger, and then as you get older, you realize that, hey, I'm going to burn myself out or run myself ragged if I keep trying to do this all myself. And then dabbling into the college game, once I started learning some of that from Rand Chappell and some different coaches, that I was able to realize that you need to delegate things and give these guys to-do lists. Hey, I need this, and this done, and I need it done by X amount of time or during this day. And it's just like you go to the Division I games now or the Division I programs. Each assistant coach has a particular scout they have to do and prepare that scouting report for the next upcoming game. So I think that's all part of delegation. It's part of the whole maturation process as a coach, as you learn to do that. When
you were delegating, how were you deciding which duties to give away? Was it based on what you didn't like to do very much, or if it was something that you felt like, maybe we'll just float this out there, see what they do with it?
No, I think it's a combination of both.
Okay.
There's some duties that you probably don't particularly enjoy, but and then there's some that you probably enjoy and need to let another coach, especially if you're trying to groom your coaches, you want them to get a little experience of everything. You don't want, I always said I don't want an assistant coach leaving me and not being better than when he arrived. So I think you have to trust them, and of course if they mess it up, you sit down and coach them up and have them maybe rework it again or try it again the next time. But I definitely think you owe that to your assistant coaches to be able to turn them loose and let them gain that experience, because if not, then you're really not doing that person a favor, and you're probably not getting the best out of someone, because at some point they're going to turn you off and resent that I'm not getting to do anything, I'm not getting to help, you're not listening to my input, you're not giving me any responsibilities, and to me that would be a dangerous game to have someone on your staff that feels that way.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that part about coaching them up, because I think a lot of folks' natural instinct is, okay, if I delegate it and it's not done right, I'm just going to take it back. And it's like, well, you took something off of your plate and then you added it right back. Were there ever some things, did you ever have a moment where you had to come to the realization that, okay, there is this particular element of the program I'm not very good at, or I'm not as good at as maybe my assistant is, and so I hand it off based on that? Have you ever had one of those, or were you just good at everything, Coach Wilson?
No, I wouldn't say I'm good at everything. There's coaches that have unbelievable talents, and we had a guy that was a graduate assistant for us at Henderson State named Yancey Walker, and Yancey, actually, if you remember, he was Raekwon Elliott's head coach for 1 year at Hale. We brought him over, and then he left and went again, and he had tremendous success at West Plains in Missouri. But Yancey was super duper scouting, breakdown, really love, and he loved to do that.
Yeah.
And there, there's times when you've been going hard for a few days and you're tired, and you maybe don't want to break that tape down.
Yeah.
And Yancey was one that you could always count on him. He was going to be thorough. He was going to get you a good scouting report, and he was always good at that. So there's some things absolutely you can turn over to those guys sometimes. Maybe when you're not feeling it, you're not on your A game, and you want someone else to step up. And that's part of being a team. You know what I mean? The coaching staff is just like the team. You want to have everyone lift people up when they're down.
That's a beautiful thing right there, Coach. Now, you mentioned leaving the district for a minute. Okay, so how long did your East Central stint as head coach last?
We were over there almost 3 years.
3 years.
And then myself, I went to Henderson State University and spent a year, and then went to Sterling College 1 year, and then I was at Independence, Kansas for Independence Community College for almost 6 years.
Man.
And but in that time, I also went back to Henderson for a couple of years with Coach Redmond, and we had some really good teams there. And then that's when I came back to TPS. So I was away for a little while, and then with a little small stint there, being athletic director at Oolaga. So
man, you did go make your bones.
I did.
Now, when you went back into the state of Kansas and in Missouri, those were coaching gigs, right? Mm-hmm. That wasn't administration,
right?
So did you just think, okay, I'm ready to take it back to the college level after a few years at the high school level, or was there an offer that you just couldn't refuse to go ahead and explore that?
No, I think it was just a dream of mine that
Gotcha.
I wanted to do that. I wanted to step up to that level,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes you have to do things that maybe aren't as enjoyable. And even going to be the low man on the totem pole after being the head coach on the high school level, there's some humility there.
Right.
You go from doing some of that to being the guy that has to do all the grunt work. I remember getting back from a game at Delta State. We played at Delta State when I was at Henderson State, and we got back. I don't remember, it was 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and Coach Chappell handed me a couple of videotapes and said, "Here, I need these broke down and in my office by 10 in the morning." And we just gotten back about 2 in the morning. So, of course, in the midst of that, I have to make sure that the manager gets the laundry going and all that, so that it'll be ready for the guys for practice the next day, and just breaking down that tape. And I remember thinking, is this something I really want to do, because this is tough?
Yeah.
And but being around some good people and learning a lot from him, that's just part of it. You have to pay your dues and work your way through it. And some coaches want to do that and some don't.
Right.
But it was a good time, good learning experience, and some of that probably made me maybe a better person, and probably a little harder worker.
There you go. That's paying dues. It's almost like a lost art, man. Folks, we want what we want when we want it.
That's right.
And it's like sometimes if we can just turn our own clock off and just do the work, like you said earlier about building the program, and just keep your head down and just do the work, things usually work out when they're supposed to, the way they're supposed to.
We hope so, for sure.
All right. Now, when you came back to the district, was coaching behind you, just admin time?
Coach was behind me.
Okay.
I really, to this day, Aaron, don't have any desire to go back. I enjoy right now doing what I do. I enjoy lifting up our coaches. Just like you, I like reaching out and let them know that I'm thinking about them or want to support them.
You
in
do
any
that.
way that I can. If you remember right this summer, I sent you a text just out of the blue.
You did.
And said, hey, I was thinking about you and appreciate what you do at Central with those kids. And, I think it speaks volumes to you when you've walked the halls at Central High School. You've grown up in the neighborhood. That's your community. The Central High School is your community. And,
Yes, sir.
And so I take my hat off to you, because I think not only are you a leader at Central High School, but I think you're a mentor, and I think you're a role model. And not only to that boys basketball team, but I think all the students at Central High School are fortunate to be able to see someone in front of them that has walked the walk and can talk the talk.
Man, I appreciate that. That's a lot of praise right there. And it was so wild how I ended up back here. But I can remember trying to fight the feeling like, nah, you know what? I bounced around the last couple of years. I think I'm gonna go ahead and sit tight. But I was trying to give myself 2 days in a row to where I felt the same way about it. And after a while, that angel on my shoulder was just like, man, why are you making excuses not to do what you know makes sense? And so, man, I came on back to the house, and no regrets, man. I'm glad to be home.
Well, we're glad you're here, Aaron. We feel blessed to have you. And you're in a unique situation, because kids can't tell you how it is, because you can tell them how it is.
There you go.
And
that's real.
I was on that committee that hired you, and I was one of your biggest fans. But I tell you, the stock that was placed into you by Dr. Wallace, Oliver Wallace, and Terry Scott both spoke highly, and I think you've got some people that strongly back you and support you and want to see you continue to do well and be successful at Central High School. And I think you've got a good administrative team over there as well that lifts you up. And
oh yeah, man.
and speaks into you a lot of praise.
Right. And they haven't told me no yet. We love you guys, man. All right, now check this out. You have been newly promoted in the last year. So I'm pretty sure congratulations are in order, but I'm going to offer it to you anyway. You are now the district athletic director for Tulsa Public Schools, right?
That's correct.
What has been the difference, if you can notice any, from moving over basically one seat?
Not a lot. I think, Gil and I rode this thing almost 10 years together, 9.5, something like that. And, Gil had done it, now that he's retired, had done it for almost 50 or over 50 years, Aaron. So there was a period there. You probably know me. I'm not a big me guy, beat on my chest,
True.
Ego maniac or anything like that. So I just really tried to lift Gil up, support him where he needed support, take the responsibilities he gave me, and do my best. But I really tried to keep my mouth shut and just my 2 ears open and listen and gain his 50 years experience. People said, what was the one thing you gained? And I said, I tried to keep my mouth shut, my ears open, and take his 50 years and make them my 50 years.
There you go.
And that was my philosophy all along, because Gil is obviously brilliant in so many ways. But just because he's been around it, being an athletic director at not only the high school level, but at 3 different Division II programs that he led, you try to take something and again, going back to the snowball,
there you go.
You're just trying to roll it up and trying to absorb some of that and make it stick to you. But not a lot of changes when you talk about moving from seat to seat. There's some things I'd like to see that maybe we do a little bit differently. Gil and I lined up pretty well philosophically, so I don't think we're going to make any big changes.
No wholesale changes.
No, I think the biggest thing with me is I want to be accessible. I want you guys to be able to reach out to me for anything and everything, and if I can help you, I can. And if there's times I'm going to have to say no, I'll say no. But I just want to be there to lift you up, support you guys. No matter what sport it is. Obviously, being a basketball guy, I feel like I've got a good grasp of what we can do to be successful in the district. I've tried to promote basketball throughout the district. Not only that, I've tried to promote other sports. We were able to do some things different, some new things. Really started our junior high soccer, since that was one of the things that I really tried to pilot and get out there, was our junior high soccer, and I think that's really helped us because for so long, our boys and girls basketball were kind of our flagship sports here.
Right.
After all those old years of football dominance.
Yep. And
I think soccer is one of our up-and-coming strong sports. East Central has been phenomenal. And Booker T boys and girls have been good. So we want to continue to try to build on some of that. But, I think I was some guys gave me some ideas of some things they would like to have seen, and I tried to do that with the BOK High School Hoop Showcase. That was kind of my baby. We sat down in the room with some guys from the BOK Center, and we brainstormed and able to run that through a few years. And of course now we're not going to have that for the next few years because we're moving the tournament champions to the BOK Center the next few years. So,
that part I didn't know.
Yeah, I'm just trying to carry the torch of basketball in the district. Not only that, but all of our sports. I want to see all of our sports be successful. And it just so happens, again, I'm a basketball guy, and I don't favor it, but I know, but I feel like I know it.
You know what I mean?
Do. So I don't want people to think, oh, he's just all about basketball. That's where I feel comfortable because I've got great knowledge there. But all our sports, I want to lift them up and want to see them be successful. And I think our coaches know that they can always rely on me when they need me.
Yeah, and you actually took the accessibility question right out of my head because I was coming at you with that one next. One thing I can attest to is pretty much anytime I dial you up or if I send you a text message, you're back at me just like that. So I appreciate that because I know you got a laundry list of things to do every day. Which leads me to my next question. What's a normal day look like for Mick Wilson? Or does it vary from day to day?
Well, it varies from day to day, but I think first and foremost, I always try to get in. And Aaron, one thing I always try to do is email people and call people right back. You talked about me taking your phone call.
Right.
I think that part of we shouldn't lose sight here at the service center is it's the education service center, and with service being the center of that. And I think our job here is to support the people that are out doing what I call the real work. You guys are out there doing the real work. You're facing kids every day. And that's what we're in. We're in the kid business. And so what you guys do is much more important than what I do day to day. You're out there dealing. My job is to provide you service and support and be there when you need me. Whether it's if I can help you guys financially, I will. If I need to come out and sit down with parents or kids and help diffuse a situation, I'm always part of that. If it's helping kids get eligible, I'm part of that. But I think the most part is getting in here and always trying to answer my emails and phone calls first. I think that's important. Even with parents, I'll spend the time with parents quickly. Remember, when there's a kid sitting out or a kid not eligible, if it's sitting on my desk, that's one more day the kid loses, and I don't like that.
Right.
I don't want anything to stall out in our office here holding a kid back, because our job is to move those quickly so our kids can compete and be a part of you guys' programs. I think that's a big thing. So always, everything I do right off, usually my mornings, is everything, what do I need to do to lift up either our students or our coaches or our teachers, and then work through the rest of my day, whether it's scheduling, whether it's dealing with a personnel issue, things like that. But like I said, the biggest crux of me in the mornings when I get here is who do I need to lift up today, and what can I do to help them?
How do you determine which sporting events that you're going to be attending? Because, of course, a part of accessibility is visibility.
That's right.
And I see you, pretty often, probably more often than what I expected to. Maybe I just held your title too far up. Like, man, I probably will never see him. But I still see you often. But I'm like, I always wondered how you determine, okay, is it this week I'm going to hit this venue? This week I'm going to hit this sport. How's it go?
Well, we really have our staff meetings on Monday morning,
Right.
And we'll decide what we're going to do for the week. We'll talk to each other. If it's overlapping sports, then we may say, hey, I'm going to go to this volleyball game, and I'm going to go to this football game, and then the next person will say, okay, I'm going to go to this one. So we don't want to all be at the same places. And Jen and Steve and Marlon Houston's getting ready to join our staff. We just divide and conquer, and I think it's important for us during basketball season to be out on Tuesday nights and Friday nights. I think in football it's nice for us to be out somewhere every Friday night. And I've even been known to go first half at East Central
Right.
and watch that, and stop by La Fortune and hit the second half at Edison or Memorial. So I think that's important. Our folks need to know that we're there for them, and again, it's part of us lifting them up and being supportive and valuing their jobs. You don't want them to think that you don't feel like they're important, or what they do is you're not interested. We don't want to send that message, and so that's part of being accessible. And that was one thing I really want to be cognizant of this year, is getting out more into the schools. Unfortunately, this COVID thing has kind of put a damper on that. Or I'm going to be out nearly every day when we get through this junk.
Right.
Trust me.
Right. Speaking of COVID, what a heck of a time for anybody to be starting a new gig or to be losing a gig, because unfortunately both of those things happen. Talk about the effect of COVID, what it has done. Not to sit here and whine, because everybody's dealt with it to some degree, but what has it done, particularly in the city of Tulsa and in Tulsa Public Schools, as it relates to the educational experience overall and the athletic accessibility on top of that?
Well, I'll give you my opinion. Again, you're out there grinding it out every day with the kids, and so you probably got a better grasp of what it's done to the student athlete. My opinion is that I think our kids. I know my two, that my I've got twins that are sophomores at Booker T, and I know they really miss the social aspect of not having that for 8 or 10 months, and even some kids beyond that, because some of their parents didn't let them come back.
Right.
And so I think, I don't know if our discipline issues. It seems like I'm hearing more this year than I've heard in the past, but I don't know if that's just because the kids have, the pent-up aggression and not being able to get out and do some things. I don't know any of that. I'm not a great psychologist on that. I just know that what it did to my two was that my daughter was just almost a basket case at the end of not being able to be around her friends and be able to have some of that social. My son's kind of more of an introverted kid. He seemed to handle it just fine.
Yeah,
but
right up his alley, huh?
Yeah, I know. It really bothered my daughter a lot, so I can only imagine how it's bothered other kids. I'm glad that I feel like last year everyone was kind of behind the 8 ball, but I'm going to give props to Dr. Gist and Paula Shannon and Jorge Robles and our administrative team this year, because we held in place of where we left off last year with COVID. If you remember, we kind of sent that out early and stayed the course, and really, Aaron, the last 5 or 6 weeks on the COVID committee report that I do on Monday mornings, Tulsa Public Schools, we've been the lowest district in Tulsa County.
See.
Hands down.
See.
And we went to that first Frontier Valley Conference meeting, which is the conference that Booker T's now in. So we went to that conference meeting, and right off the bat, everyone went around the room and they surveyed, what are you doing? We were the only district that said, listen, we're going to hold tight with masks. We're going to keep requiring those. We're going to keep our social distancing. We're going to keep our capacities down. And I think administrative philosophy coming down from the top to us I think that pushed us forward, and I think it did us some good. And I think at first people maybe thought we were being a little too conservative, but I think we're seeing the dividends, and I think our vaccinations are up and our COVID rates are down, and I think that's district-wide. I think we really stepped up as a team district-wide and locked arm in arm and said, you know what, we're going to fight this thing together, and I'm really proud of our district for doing that.
That's a beautiful thing, man. I'm gonna attempt to liken some of that to what we do as coaches when it comes to strategizing. How do you know, and how do you approach it? It's like, okay, this is the plan, we're gonna stick to it, or are we willing to deviate, or are we're realizing that this is not gonna be 100 proof, so there will be some bad days or bad apples, so to speak. How do you determine whether we're gonna continue with plan A, or we need to shuffle the deck and find a different approach to this whole thing?
I think our numbers, I think the data is speaking loud and clear to us right now that I think we're headed down the path to recovery, and I think if you ask me and you talk to our data folks, I think we're the leading district right now, and like I said, in COVID cases, our numbers are down. The graph chart that I've seen each time is we're near the bottom. So I mean, I don't think right now we need to reinvent the wheel or do anything different. I think we just hold tight, keep really trying. We can't require, but keep emphasizing with our kids and our folks, our employees, to get vaccinated,
right,
to be part of that, and continue with masks. I've noticed that some people are doing masks anyway in places where you don't even have to. Mm-hmm. So I'm not trying to advocate either way. I just know what seems to be working for us, and so I'm proud of that.
Talk about a new normal.
Absolutely.
Coach, we're gonna wrap it like this. We're gonna take it back to the hardwood. I got 2 more basketball questions I want to ask you about. Now, we talked about it a little bit before we hit the play button. There are 2 gentlemen that I'm pretty sure you're familiar with. You mentioned one of them, Terry Scott, and Willie Ponder. Now, Central, they won the 5A state championship in 1998, and they both told me that 2 out of their, I think, 4 losses that they took that season came from Tulsa East Central, coached by you, man. What do you remember about that year and how special they were, and how y'all had the kryptonite for that ball club?
I don't know what it was. It was just we matched up really well with them. I mean, they had really, really good players. I mean, not only they had Demetrius Gatewood and David Atkinson and JoJo Knowles and was it Daquan Little Penny?
Oh yeah,
Daquan Penny. Yeah, Daquan Penny, and they had good players across the board. Willie Ponder, all those guys, and we gave them a lot of respect, but our guys didn't fear them,
right,
and we knew they were good. But I just felt like that, we could tough right along with them, and we did. We were fortunate. I mean, we made plays at the end of the game. The game at Central, excuse me, Central led most of the way, and if I remember right, we changed to a zone about the beginning or a little bit into the 4th quarter, and they just went bonkers. They Demetrius just started shooting it.
Jack City.
They weren't patient to attack the zone, didn't want to hit the gaps, didn't want to try to rotate the ball to get an open shot, and they just started letting it loose. And of course, we were fortunate because sometimes in a zone, as you know, you can't rebound very well because
right,
you're not blocking out.
Don't know who you're blocking out.
We were fortunate to control the boards, and we got down on our end, and we're patient and were able to score and took it to the wire. But both games kind of played out that way.
Right.
We were just fortunate, and T. Scott has not let me live it down.
No. But that's a nice little one-up to keep in your back pocket right there, Coach.
But Willie Ponder always will flash the ring. He says, now, Coach Wilson, we've got the ring. And I said, absolutely. You guys deserved it. But they had an unbelievable team. That's a team to always remember was the 98 Central team with just a collection of really good players and the guys that played hard, and they had a lot of fun. And I tell you what, they were tough. They were tough to play against. When they wanted to guard you, they could really guard you.
Bottle you up.
They could.
Good deal. Speaking of guarding, I bet they stayed guarding y'all man to man during the end of those games too, didn't they?
They did. They did.
Sounds good. All right. To finish the deal, we call this the all due disrespect segment. And what I mean is I want you to reach back into the archives and some games that you coached, right? Whether it be at the high school level or the college level, and you lost, but you should have won. And you maintain that feeling that you should have won, even to this day. So if you could go back and run a game back against a particular opponent to change the outcome, who would that opponent be?
Let's see. I think we were playing. It was when I was at Henderson State, and I was the assistant coach. Mm-hmm. And we were playing in the Disney World Tip-Off Classic. We were playing inside Disney World then I think it was called the Milk Palace. sponsored by Drink Milk with the little
the mustache,
the milk mustache and all that. I think that it was the milk sponsors, the dairy sponsors or whatever, and they called it the Milk House or something like that. And we're playing there, and I think I can't remember. I think we're playing Minnesota Duluth, and we were up by 3. The old adage, when you're up by 3 and they've got last possession with 3 or 4 seconds left in the game, you foul. And we didn't foul.
Wow.
And the kid jumps up and shoots a 3 that banks off the glass and goes in. So now we go to overtime. We got in a little bit of foul trouble, and they beat us in overtime. That game sticks out in my mind quite a bit. I think back to that one and think that I told at the time it was Joe Redmond was the head coach. And I'm like, we got to foul, and we didn't. And but that's one where you roll the dice. It's always a gamble, but that's the gamble I'll take every time. Aaron, I don't know about you, but I'll foul every time.
Yeah,
I'm going to foul, and I'm not going to let them have a chance to tie the game because so many things on the other end of it has to happen. I mean, they still have to miss a free throw on purpose, and they have to get the offensive rebound. Only one thing has to happen when you throw it up. It's either going to go in or out.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
That's a lot to leave.
There's 3 or 4 other things you got to do to get a rebound and then get a shot off and all that within a certain amount of time. So
that's tough.
And I think that's actually happened a time to me before, but I can't recall right now. I know that one happened for a fact.
And I've seen it go the other way too, to where you foul and the other team is supposed to go and miss that first one and make the second one, but they do it in the opposite direction. They'll make the first one. Like, oh, okay, well, thank you. It's one of those types of deals. But Coach Wilson is always going to be coach to me, man. I appreciate you devoting us some time on Saturday, man. Keep doing what you're doing. You've done a great job thus far. You've been super hospitable and accessible to me, and I look at you as a friend, buddy.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Aaron, for having me on.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you.